It's a 60 Go podcast presented by Min Sports. Joining me in studio is Damien Seabold. Seabs, how are you, mates?
I'm good, Tom.
Now, we're doing the Dolphins review of 2023 today. Look, there's no doubt at the start of the year the Dolphins shocked a lot of teams. They come out of the blocks faster than anyone else thought they would. They were favourites for the wooden spoon at the start of the year. And look, even though they had a really bad back half of the year, there's no denying that, still a massively successful year.
Oh, they'd be ecstatic with how they went. Their first 10 rounds it was excellent. They shocked everyone. I think we had a look before, and what did you say? Did they go 7 and 8?
7 and 8 in their first 15.
Yeah, which, you know, I'm sure if they were given the option to take 7 and 8 before the season started, they would have jumped at that. So, yeah, it was great for them. They certainly shocked a few teams. So I think early on, for example, the Roosters one comes to mind where they look like a team who lobbed thinking, okay, well, we've just got to turn up and we'll beat the Dolphins. And the Dolphins just hung around, stayed in it, and won. And that's how they won a number of their games early in the year, was by just giving themselves a chance, just hanging in the fight, and then could get the job done. I can only think of the game against Cronulla at Magic Round. That was the only one that comes to mind where they actually blew a team away. Cronulla were awful that day, and Dolphins were red hot.
Yeah, and particularly coming off the trials, I remember last year they had a trial against the Titans. They got absolutely smashed, and they looked awful. So to be able to turn around very quickly and get some wins on the board very early certainly helped them up for the rest of the year. They bought very smartly to have some instant success in the Melbourne forward pack, Bromwich brothers and Kafusi as well. You bring in Tom Gilbert, who is just an absolute star, really.
Yeah.
And
it ties in with them falling away was him getting injured as well. He is excellent. While the Bromwiches and Kafusi signings are great for year one and maybe this year, I can see them falling away very quick.
So can I. But the fact that you get Tom Gilbert back, who I think is a star, like he's a potential Australian player in the future, Tom Gilbert, and then you bring in someone like Tom Flegler as well, who is a current Australian player, and
Herbie Farnworth, again, different position, but elite.
Yeah, I said at the time when they signed Herbie Farnworth, I think that is the best signing in the Dolphins' short history.
It is, and I think people they underestimate how much that's going to impact Brisbane. He is so good. The amount of yards that he makes coming out of trouble, when we spoke about it with the Brisbane podcast that we did, you know, it's not their strength, their yardage game out of trouble. He's their number one player at it. He gets them on the front foot, and he's got that X factor and strike where he can score points. The Dolphins are going to get a lot out of him.
And you'd look at the top team, speed kills.
Yep.
We spoke about it with your brother. They're back five at Manly. A lot of speed right across the park with them. And you look at this Dolphins team now, and you've got the hammer at the back, Herbie Farnworth there. Like, you've got some serious game-breaking players there.
Jake Alvarillo, as you said, look, again, I don't think he's an elite player, but he is quick.
Yep. And then you've got a class on the back of that. Jermaine Ozako had a really great year off the back of that. So, look, there is some really good grass shoots coming out there for the Dolphins there. Yeah,
and again, they missed Sean O'Sullivan for a big chunk of the year. He's back fit. Katoa, the young half, again, he's going to be better for the season. You know, you look at blokes like Anthony Milford still being in that squad. I just don't see a world where he's in their best 17.
No.
Because fully fit, is Nikorima even in their best 17?
Probably at 14.
Utility, yeah, that's right. And I think that's about where he stands.
But even then, you've got someone like Ray Stone coming back who missed through injury as well. So Ray Stone, he could be that 14-type player, play that a bit of dummy half when required, right?
Yeah, again, I think Nikorima's the logical option there, though, because he can play fullback, throw him on the wing, throw him in the halves, and at hooker.
Jeremy Marshall-King was one of the most improved players of the competition.
Yep.
Connolly Lemu had his moments as well. So, look, I think the Dolphins have a really great platform.
Yeah, I do too, mate. And I think for mine, I see them being around about where they were this year.
Yeah, so let's take a look at where they finished. So they finished 13th for the year, right? So we spoke about that top 12 teams. Like we could be saying in 12 months' time the Dolphins are in that top 12 team.
Yeah, thereabouts. Yeah, but again, because I do think one or two of those teams that are in that top 12 will fall away dramatically.
Like, it wouldn't shock me at all this year if the Dolphins were better than the Raiders.
No, I agree.
Yeah, so there is a couple of teams there, and look, The Warriors are only an injury or two away from collapsing as well, really, when you think about it. So I think the Dolphins probably don't have a path to the top 8, but there is a path to the top 11, 10 there for them.
Yeah. Well, they weren't that far away. I know they finished 13th. There was a big difference in the points between 12th and 13th. But again, they weren't that far away. I don't see this next season being such a dramatic difference in how the season plays out. So, they went really well early and horrendous late. I see this next season for the Dolphins being more consistent. So I don't think they're going to have such a great start. They might not be 6 from 10 like they were, or 7 from 15 like they were. I see them being a consistent team during the year, win a couple, lose a couple, win a couple, lose a couple. That's how I see their fortunes playing out.
There's a real strong chance as well that they get off to another red-hot start like they did this year, because listen to this. So they've got the Cowboys at home, right? So, look, I would expect the Cowboys to win, but you never know.
Would it be ridiculous to make a statement that whoever loses that game doesn't make the 8?
Well, it might come down to that. Like, seriously.
Well, I just think that if Cowboys don't win round 1 against the Dolphins, they're not making the 8.
Well, they stay with me here. So the Dolphins at home against the Cowboys, Dolphins at home against St. George, winnable game. Dolphins on the road, but at the Gold Coast, so they don't have to travel too far for the Gold Coast. Dolphins at home against West Tigers. Dolphins away, but only to the Broncos. They don't leave Brisbane until round 6. So
that first 5 games, there's a world where they could be 3 from 5.
Yes, and I would think that's what they're aiming for.
Yeah, they would have to.
Yeah, that's a really good start to the season if they're 3 and 5, because they're not leaving southeast corner of Queensland for the first month and a half of the competition.
It makes a big difference travel, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They can settle into a rhythm, and they've got regular 7-day breaks between all the games, so they can really set themselves up.
Have they got one of those dream draws? Have they, where that first 5 rounds it's 7, 7, 7, 7?
Yes. So look, it's
that makes more of a difference than travel,
of course,
because you're planning and your prep. It's just consistent.
Yeah.
And consistency is a big thing when it comes to elite sport.
And
it's amazing how much of a difference that makes.
And the furthest they have to go is the Gold Coast, where half of them probably live anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So look, it's set up really well and they might be 3-1 going into that Broncos game, which would be a massive game.
Yeah, that's it. And just purely on the emotion and Flegler and Farnworth coming back to play, Brisbane have now lost 4 from their grand final 17.
Tom Flegler.
Yep.
Herbie Farnworth.
Yep. Capewell.
Kurt Capewell. And?
Paliasia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So, look, 4 out of the starting 17. That is true.
Yeah, like 4 out of any sides. It's a big chunk.
Look at Melbourne. Like their middles were absolutely decimated at the start of the year with losing those 3 guys. So, look, it's going to be really fascinating. I can see a lot of upside moving forward for the Dolphins. If you're buying shares in a team, the Dolphins aren't the worst one to buy shares into long term.
No, definitely not. They're not. I don't have them in the Tigers, Bulldogs. I just don't know where they're going category.
Yeah. No, they're a long way from Tigers, Bulldogs, and you know what? It actually makes you think: what the hell are you guys doing at Tigers land? Because
dogs, you can at least see what they're doing. It makes sense.
Yes,
they're not. The results aren't on the board, but you can see why they've gone about, who they've bought and what they're doing. So at least there was some thought behind it. I think the Tigers are just taking a guess.
Yeah, exactly. There's been a bit of news recently about Valence Tavare. You spoke about him. You went to Magic Round this year and you saw him play. Do you think he is a 200-game NRL player?
No.
Okay.
No.
And do you think that the media hype of him has gotten too out of control?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, really straightforward, easy answers. Just watching him live, you can see that, A, he's never really played footy, rugby league or watched a great deal. Just his positioning in defence, he looked like a guy that was lost. He had no idea where he's supposed to be. And someone who's grown up playing rugby where you don't need to get back, you don't need to get your numbering right on short sides, you don't need to get back 10, you don't need to position yourself back properly in the line where your position needs to be. So those things were really obvious from the very beginning. Would I like to tackle him? No chance in hell. Is he going to score 9 times out of 10 when he's one-on-one close to the line? Yes. But there's more to footy than that.
Yeah.
So anytime he plays NRL, smart players, smart coaches are just going to work him over. 10 minutes of pain for 70 minutes of success.
One player that had a great year was the Hammer so Tavio Fido. In representative football, he plays centre, and he's played really well there in State of Origin. Do you think there is a world where he plays centre for the Dolphins and Herbie has a go at fullback?
I think that'd be a shock to me. I think it'd be strange. Herbie is an elite centre. He might want to play fullback.
Yeah.
But regardless, he's got his pay packet. He's got the money.
Yeah. Stand over there, mate.
Yeah, I just think it'd be strange to move someone who's a proven elite fullback, someone who's a proven elite centre. Why swap them?
Yeah.
Hammer's shown that he can play in the centres. I think he was excellent for Queensland in the centres. I thought he was really poor in the centres for Australia. But again, there were a number of blokes who weren't great for Australia in those last couple of games. I don't know. I just wouldn't move him. I just don't see the value in moving him from fullback.
I will say, just on the Australian thing, there was a lot of guys that didn't play well for Australia, and I think it actually does come back to coaching. Like we saw after the Origin series, particularly after Queensland won, they asked the Hammer, and the Hammer was on the side with Murray Tuolangi.
Yeah.
And they asked those guys how you guys were so good defensively. If you remember, Murray had some of the most phenomenal try-saving efforts you could imagine. And they said, well, working with Josh Hannay set us up for absolute success in defence.
And they'd also worked with him for a couple of years previously at the Cowboys. So, and they had combinations. They'd worked together plenty of times. It was like riding a bike for them. They were just falling back into what they knew.
Exactly. So you had that on-field combination with those two guys, but also the off-field combination with the coaching staff as well. So I think that I don't think it can be understated how
the selections to start with for that Aussie side were just bizarre.
Yep.
I couldn't get my head around it.
Yeah. Set them up for a lot of failure.
Yeah, it did.
There. So, look, I think that the Hammer's a certainty to be in the Queensland team at centre and probably stay at fullback for the Dolphins. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, definitely. If he's not in the centres for the Queensland team, he's on the wing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what's your prediction for Queensland? For the Dolphins next year?
The same.
Yep.
Yeah. I can't see him pushing for the top 8. I don't think their depth is good enough yet.
Yep.
So 1 or 2 injuries and things are tough. But I don't see him being a bottom 3 or 4 side. I see him being around about where they were. They might win another game or 2 that they weren't expected to, but hey, you never know. They might drop a game or 2 that they were expected to win next year.
I can see them making it into that top 12 of teams with the Raiders falling out, being just below the 8.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that Raiders is definitely an opening for teams to move out of the bottom 3 or 4, but also into the 8.
Fair enough. This has been the 60O podcast. And